Are we on? Yep. Okay. We're going to go ahead and call this meeting to order. Ms. Richmond, will you call the roll for each member?
Chairwoman Harkey. Vice Chair Runner.
Here.
Ms. Ma.
Here.
Mr. Horton.
Here.
Ms. Towers.
Here.
Okay. We have a quorum present. Good afternoon, members and guests. I will start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Miko Kaito, Miko will lead us. Miko is a security officer, the BOE, and the CDTFA. He's been here for 15 years. I understand he's the longest-serving security officer we have. He was born and raised in Ethiopia and became a U.S. citizen on October 14, 2006. Miko lives in Yuba City with his wife, Sibel, and his 11-year-old son, Yafet. Miko is a banker in Ethiopia and is currently taking college courses in accounting, and we thank him for being here today and his service to the state. Will you please stand now as he leads us in the pledge?
I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Thank you for your help and your service there today.
Thank you.
Ms. Richmond, please introduce the first item.
Good afternoon, members. Our first item on this afternoon's agenda is the Chief Counsel matter. Item I, other Chief Counsel matter. I-1, we have a resolution conferring powers on the Executive Director.
Mr. Nanjo.
Good afternoon, Member Runner, members of the board, Ms. Stowers. What we have in front of you today is a draft, or actually it's a resolution conferring powers on our new Executive Director, Dean Kinney. There have been some comments and questions I've received regarding the scope of the conferred powers. So just a few brief description on the process I went through. I modeled this or used as a base the prior conferred powers that this board executed for Mr. David Gow. But since that time, we've had AB 102 and AB 131, some other provisions which have slightly altered the powers of the board and the responsibility of the board. So I went through and basically determined which items were still necessary and which items were no longer necessary. So some things have dropped out between the version of that was used for Mr. Gow and this version for Mr. Kinney. A couple of items to note. Although there is a little bit of ambiguity, because in doing my research, I realized that even though some powers of the board were altered by those two pieces of legislation and some government code sections had changed, some other general provisions were not altered, and that kind of created a little bit of question whether or not there would be still some powers that would need to be delegated for Mr. Kinney to do his proper function for the board. So that being said, that's how we ended up with the resolution of conferred powers that you have in front of you today. There are a couple of important points that I'd like to draw the board's attention to. One is with regards to approval of contracts over $1 million. We have a situation where our outside counsel on the Verizon matter, this board had previously approved the contract going over $1 million. I believe it was May of last year. We need to do a further amendment because unfortunately, due to the work that was necessary in that case, he's gone past the amount in the in that particular amendment. So we're going to be entering into shortly a further amendment, which only increases it approximately 100 to 150,000. But because it's still over $1 million, there was some question as to whether that needed to come back to the board. So I've clarified that in this resolution of conferred powers, saying that unless the board has identified a reason or a desire for matters to come back to the board or puts any kind of limitations or criteria on it, once it's been through this board for approval over $1 million, that any amendments of minor natures such as this to continue the work can be done without coming back to the board. The other matter is I had not been able to complete my research, so this is designed to be a resolution conferring powers just to get Mr. Kinney past the next month or two. I will promised to this board to bring back another agenda item for another look at the resolution to make sure it still is appropriate. At that time, I'll be able to further refine whether things need to be added or subtracted at that point. So with that, I am available to answer any questions the board members may have.
Okay, any questions? Member Stowers?
Thank you. Thank you for the resolution, and I want to say, starting off, that since we appointed Mr. Kinney to the ED, myself and Controller Yee, we're very pleased with what he's done so far to move the board forward. However, we do have some concerns with the resolution, and I would like for those concerns to be addressed in writing, and I am not prepared to approve the resolution at this time. The concerns are dealing with items A, B, and C. A, the resolution granting the ED the authority to execute any and all personnel documents as the appointing power. I'm concerned with that because under Government Code 15600H, the board member doesn't have authority over personnel matters. And under that same code section, the ED is solely responsible for selecting the CEAs. And then, as we all know, the board lost its delegation in April 2017. So with that being in mind, I don't know if the board has the authority to act on any of these items. And if the board doesn't have the authority to act on the items, then how could we delegate them to the ED? So I really would appreciate a memo from you explaining what the board authority is on this item, and then we can move forward there.
Okay.
On item B, dealing with budget and fiscal documents, same 15600, prohibits the board member from modifying or approving budget change proposals. And it provides that the ED shall modify and approve all documents, financial documents. So same issue here. If the board can't act on something, how could the board pass that authority on to the ED? Finally, regarding contracts over $1 million, same issue. Not sure what the board authority is currently, and how can we pass it on to the ED. With that being said, I would like to get something in writing, and would like to get clarification that if we don't adopt this resolution today, is that going to stop the operations of the BOE? Can BOE continue to operate and move forward?
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Stowers. So a couple things. One, I would recommend that the board go ahead and approve this or adopt this resolution as is. Couple reasons. One, to the extent that the board doesn't have the authority, the legislation leaves the authority with the executive director, so there is no change there. The board can only confer powers that it has. If those powers don't exist with the board, then presumably Mr. Kinney, as the executive director, would have those powers, so it doesn't change the effect of it. However, if there's any question, this would clear up the question. Any of those questions or challenges to whether or not those powers were properly or appropriately conferred to Mr. Kinney. The other issue is it does impact a couple things, as I may have mentioned. It makes it, we may have a challenge with getting the approval of the amendment on the Verizon contract. That may actually have to wait till the February meeting, depending on what my conversations with both DGS and CDTFA, who's doing the administrative work and moving those contract amendments forward to us.
Has DGS indicated that they had a problem with Mr. Kinney signing off on it, or is it just CDTFA?
Right now, it's CDTFA. The problem is I haven't been able to get CDTFA to forward them on to DGS until they're satisfied, and we have a couple other issues. It's not just that one.
But they're not responsible for approving BOE's contracts, correct?
That is correct. But that doesn't change the fact that we've been trying to get these amendments moving since November, and they still haven't moved forward. So it's been a source of difficulty for us. So the other issue is just kind of to address some of your concerns. I have no problems putting, even if the board chooses to approve this resolution of conferring powers, I will have no problems doing a memo to the board members or yourself, either one, to kind of plan those out, kind of indicate what authorities we have, kind of just as a way of example. A lot of the government code section 15600, the original kind of organic authority for this board, are the ones that weren't changed. That language, for example, 15600 sub A, provides that the board shall prescribe rules for its own government and for the transaction of its business, is a general provision, and that was not changed by the legislation. So it's things of that nature that are kind of general pronouncements of the board's authority. The other thing I would direct the board members' attention to is the fact that the items that are being conferred, execution of any and all personnel documents as the appointing power. It goes beyond just the CEAs and things that we do know that Mr. Kinney has authority, definitely has authority over, as were prescribed under either AB 102 or 131, mostly 102. And the other thing I think you mentioned, or the other item you mentioned, Ms. Stowers, was execution of the fiscal documents and the budget information. That one, if you notice, B is written in a way that says execution of any and all budgetary and fiscal documents for and on behalf of the board as the appointing power. So this is broad enough to cover things that may go beyond just those that may have been contemplated in AB 102, which is what this resolution of conferred powers was designed to do. Finally, the other thing that importantly exists with this resolution of conferred powers is it allows Mr. Kinney to delegate those functions as he deems necessary to his delegatees, for lack of a better term. And that technically doesn't exist until the resolution of conferred powers is issued. So.
Thank you.
I think your points are good, and I think I would think it would be in our best interest, as Chief Counsel indicated, for us to go adopt this, but at the same time, I think review those issues, because, again, even if we are conferring powers to which we don't have incorrectly, we ought to at least make sure that the document is correct. And my concern, I guess, is that right now, it's a bit of a rough sail right now in our relationships with the other agencies anyhow, and I would hate to give them, in the sense of, I don't mean only in the sense that we're trying to work through a lot of uncharted territory in relationship, and I'd hate to give them another reason why they can't honor Mr. Kinney as our ED. So, but I think your points are right, spot on. Mr. Horton?
Thank you, Chairman Runner. Members, I got to say, if there's concerns relative to the document itself, the document sort of codifies the intent of the board. So, and now that Ms. Stowers sort of brings that up, I share some of those same concerns and would ask that we put this over and have the document reflect the true intent of the parties relative to that. I do believe that Mr. Kinney has the authority relative to the legislation to act on just about any personnel or budgetary matter, unless it specifically requires public discussion, public disclosure, and greater transparency. Some of the other issues of, approving certain dollar values and so forth, I actually believe that all of those issues should probably come before the public to the extent that we can, and not have them in closed session. Those discussions to the extent that it does not sort of hinder our position from a litigation perspective. But that would be my thought, unless there's something as far as time, unless we're under press for time and we actually need this document. I think it should reflect the true intent of the parties.
I guess I thought I heard the Chief Counsel thought that it was timely.
Yes, there are a lot of positions that we're trying to fill, as the board members know. It's kind of challenging. We're in a challenging period because we are very short-staffed and we have a lot of vacancies. And it is my understanding that a resolution of conferred powers of this nature would assist us in getting things through CDTFA and some of the parties that we're dealing with. suffice it to say that I don't think the effects and the reality of AB 102 are really well understood by some of the counterparties we're dealing with, CDTFA, DGS. In some cases, we've gotten a little bit of pushback on things that I don't think we should be. So I think it would be helpful to have the conferred powers. So again, it's my strong recommendation that we go ahead and approve this, and we can even bring it back next meeting if we want.
Again, I'm just concerned about not being able to move forward in an area that's a bit fuzzy right now in our relationship. So again, I don't have any trouble at all asking it to be put back on the agenda for next month for review again, but just at least moving it forward, so at least we take that issue off the table. Member Stowers?
I really would like to get clarification on what the powers are of the board. I'm concerned that you're telling us that CDTFA, who's supposed to be basically providing service to the board, is putting some stoppage in trying to get work done. But, and I think that's probably where there needs to be some cross-communication between the two. But to hire employees, that's, that's pretty much a Cal HR issue for us right now. So having or not having the resolution shouldn't stop the ability to move forward with hiring. Same thing with contracts, that's DGS. So moving forward with the contract, even to extend the contract, is DGS. It's not within, that's really clear that BOE doesn't have that power right now.
Yeah, historically, the Board of Equalization has always conferred that power, that authority to the executive director, at least over the 30-some years that I've been engaged. And so the presumption should be that the executive director has that authority, especially from CDTFA, which was created by the legislation. And so I would believe that the executive director has the authority. We don't have any authority to hire civil service employees, never did, never should have. We don't. And it's the same thing with CEAs. Even prior to the legislation, the Board of Equalization relinquished that authority to the executive director. So I think we've already set forth the position that the executive director has those positions. And the concern is just any misconception that may be communicated as a result of a document that says we're transferring authority that the legislation says we don't have. And we historically have not had.
I mean, I think this discussion here identifies the fact that we have concerns about it. I guess I'm more concerned about what are the real more practical aspects. I think we can believe all we want about what authority we believe they already have, but at this point, if we are getting pushback from those other agencies, and again, the chief counsel, and I'm going to ask the ED to come on up, feels that this would be helpful in them performing their jobs, then I'm concerned that we have delayed a month in regard to some important time. And again, I don't think anybody's going to criticize us for taking more authority when we've already had this discussion. We know we wanted an accurate document, but at the same time, we're concerned about making sure that we don't have any unintentional problems by not moving the document forward. So I'm going to ask Mr. Kinney specifically, in your position dealing with these other agencies, do you think this is helpful? Do you think this would be less helpful to you if we didn't at least move something forward?
Well, that's a broad statement.
Well, that's okay. Then he can
Dean
identify
Kinney.
it.
As you're aware, I've just taken over, so
Yeah.
Ms. Fleming and Mr. Nanjo have been dealing with most of these things, so I kind of defer to him. Obviously, we're having a lot of challenges getting things through, and we're working with the other agencies. I don't know of any specific problems, but again, Mr. Nanjo's been working on like contracts and items such as that.
Okay.
I mean, in addition,
member.
I mean, the governor's office is over all of these different departments, and clearly the governor's office is very much familiar with what the legislation says, what the authority is. Maybe clarification from the governor's office or someone, CDTFA's legal department, could resolve that. Again, I share the concerns about implying that we have some authority that we don't have, and that we're transferring some authority that we don't have to give. So,
Okay.
and my apologies to,
Yeah.
to all. I didn't have a chance to review it until it was, you know.
My understanding is just there's a lot of dysfunction right now from everything, from trying to get paper clips to paper to whatever. And so I just would hate for not be able to create issues that create more. But obviously, if the board wants to go ahead and put this off then to the next meeting, and then we'll deal with what those consequences are. So basically, at this point, for lack of motion, we will move on to the next item. And I think.
If I can make one suggestion, what I would, if the board, I would request the board entertain possibly approving the resolution, striking through A, B, and C. Because as I understood Ms. Stowers, those are the ones that had issues. I think it would be helpful for us to have the remaining in the conferred powers for
Something
now.
is established in the, okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's a nice suggestion.
Is there a motion for that?
Move to approve the resolution with the elimination of items A, B, and C,
Okay.
with the understanding that we would come back in
Absolutely. I
February.
would
Okay.
still do that, yes.
Okay. Is there a second? Second. Okay, second here, Member Ma. Any objection? Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, board members.
Ms. Richmond, next item.
Our next item is the administrative session. Item J is the consent agenda. J1, approval of the board meeting minutes for the November 14, 16.
Move approval.
Second somewhere? Second. Okay, without objection? Thank you.
Our next item is item K, other administrative matters. K1 is the executive director's report. K11, organizational update.
Thank you. Mr. Kinney.
Thank you, Vice Chair Renner, members, Ms. Stowers, Dean Kinney, Executive Director. Today I'll provide you with a brief update of a couple of items. In reference to our CEA positions that are vacant, we're in the final stages of the taxpayer rights advocate recruitment. Pending final approval, we've made an offer for the TRI position, and the candidate has conditionally accepted it. We hope to be announcing our selection at the end of this week. I was hopeful I'd have it by today, but I probably will have it by tomorrow. So, in reference to the Chief Legislative Research and Statistics CEA, the position was posted on January 12, 2018, and the final filing date is February 1st. We hope to be completed with this recruitment process by mid-March. In regards to the property tax program, last month Mr. Gao informed you that we entered into interagency agreements with CDTFA regarding the legal entity ownership program, the tax area services section, and the welfare exemptions program. Effective February 1st, 2018, staff in these programs will be returning to the BOE. We're also getting back 4 attorneys that formerly worked on property tax matters, so next week we'll have those programs back, and I know Mr. Nanjo is very thankful to the assistance we'll be having in our legal workload. Regarding budgets, as a budget update, CDTFA has informed us that at this time, monthly budget and expenditure reports are not available. As a result of the transition, the accounting and budget processes and systems are being updated to handle information for both BOE and CDTFA. Following these updates, CDTFA plans to conduct a reconciliation of all year-to-end expenditures so accurate budget expenditure information can be provided. Unfortunately, at this time, we don't have a time frame for when this work will be completed, but we will send regular updates to your office to report on CDTFA's progress. So we understand the challenges that is providing to your offices, and we apologize, but we're working through it with CDTFA. Regarding reinstatement rights, I know the board members have keen interest in this, the return rights for your staff. I know Chief Deputy Fleming has been in conversations with many of your offices. Ms. Fleming's working on with CDTFA to finalize a memo that we'll be sending to your offices. And once that memo is sent out, Ms. Fleming and I will be happy to meet and discuss with any of your offices that have questions. On vacancies, we currently have almost 30 vacancies agency-wide. We're in the process of identifying our current workload so that we can draft duty statements reflecting the BOE's current functions. You know, this is one of our top priorities. We will continue to provide you with updates and progress as we progress on this effort. As far as facilities for the BOE, as you know, AB 97 requires that as leases expire for board members' offices, the board members are to be located in one state-owned facility. We're working with CDTFA to identify potential solutions for this office situation. We'll keep you apprised of that. I'll continue to work with CDTFA to work on the transitions things. We'll work through with your office. You have questions, we're happy to work with you. I thank you for your patience and input as I assume the roles of Executive Director. I'll continue to communicate key items to you by emails and be happy to meet with you whenever, in addition to updates I'll make at the board meetings. And at this time, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, number of questions? Member Ma.
I just had a question. And when you say the budgets, what budget are we talking about?
17, 18,
For the whole agency?
for the whole agency.
Okay.
So I know we've been contacted about what budget your offices have. We still don't have that level of detail, and we're working with CDTFA.
And so they're going to prepare the budget, or how does this
They're
work?
providing that service. They're the ones working, splitting the budgets between the two agencies, allocating and so forth.
This is about expenditures, because this is the current budget.
Correct.
So this is about tracking current expenditures. So we
Correct.
have no ability right now throughout the whole agency to track expenditures?
I wish Ms. Fleming were here. I think it's challenging, yes. We don't really have a clear handle of where we stand. I mean, in a global, we kind of know what we've spent.
Right.
Personal service and stuff, but for board members' offices, we don't have a handle on.
Okay.
We know what you're spending, but we don't have a clear handle on what we could tell you, and you have X dollars left in your budget, which is very challenging.
And the response back from them is they'll get back to us?
Correct. And Ms. Fleming is working on that and in constant contact with them.
This is kind of the hitches that I was talking about that are out there that are a little hard.
So, I mean, we appreciate CDTFA's
Yeah.
challenges too. They're dealing with the split like
Yep.
us and the same loss of delegation in certain areas. So we appreciate their cooperation.
On one of the other topics that you had mentioned, and you and I had a brief conversation yesterday about it, and that is the proximity to staff. One of the things that it seems to me has not been established, and that is where staff is going to be located as we've created these new agencies and departments. So right now, we have people in this building, we have people over at the building where the attorneys are, and we have people out on the Thomas facility. And again, I think all our executives are in this building.
Correct.
And all their workers are somewhere else. It seems to me that is just not a good formula for efficient agency. I would think that one of the things that we ought to help guide, and I don't know whether this is both to governor's office, but also when we go to testify at the legislature, it seems to me the need for us to try to consolidate personnel to space to where personnel then can communicate with each other. People who have meetings can go to one place. It's going to be another issue for members, not so much this year, but next year, because as you said, the law requires them to be located in a state building. Well, it would make sense for them to be located in a state building that's somewhere close to where the BOE is. So I think I would hope that we would probably maybe almost be proactive in coming up with what we believe would make sense as a plan, because I don't know if we don't come up with it, I don't sure they will. And I don't know. So I don't know what's about trading space, providing some of the space that we have that we have here, and using some of the space that other agencies have out in Thomas to try to work it out. But I would hope there would be a plan to try to make sense of proximity of employees.
I agree.
No, we agree. We're looking at it. It's another one of the many items on Ms. Fleming's plate, and Mr. Nanjo's assisting. We're looking at it. It has to be in a state facility, so the board members.
Board members, right.
So staff is out.
And my
and that's
priority
what-
issue is
right.
probably less for board members and more for staff to be located in the right place to do their job.
Right. I think, with board proceedings and legal and the executive office in one place would.
Yeah.
And.
Because right now, I
not-
understand that, like, Mr. Nanjo's here,
But
and
his
his
staff is-
attorneys are all over somewhere else. And I know we do a lot with email, and we do a lot with those kinds of things, but oftentimes, you just need to walk down to somebody's office and have a discussion. And so proximity does become pretty important when it comes to efficiency. So I would hope we'd all feel like that would make sense.
I agree
Yeah.
100% that it would be nice if we can all be in one building, but if not, that the property tax staff and attorneys are together, and then the members and the executive team are together. And I'm not, of course, and the members' staff.
That are
For their
here.
Sacramento office, for their Sacramento location.
Yeah.
Should all be together.
Yeah.
The condition of it being in a state building may in and of itself be a little challenging, especially given that the Board of Equalization had outgrown this state building and sought to have access to other state buildings in order to actually relocate our staff over the last 5 years within a state building, and not being able to do that for a number of reasons. And so, if I hear Mr. Renner correctly, respectful of the staff limitations that we have, at some point, we need a proposal that deals with not only the legal, legislative as well, because the restriction on the state building has certain legislative
Right.
concerns that have to be addressed, because in order to locate and relocate, you need to have to make sure that you meet the provisions, legislative provisions related to that. So there's a lot of just fundamental thought that has to be placed in this and has to be codified and communicated in some form of a document. And quite frankly, I don't know if CDTFA has the capacity to do that either, with that caveat as a restriction. And certainly I support the members' perception that, to the extent it's cost-effective as well, not to have the variable cost of having staff in various different locations.
And part of the irony of some of the legislation was it was going to require some state employees to move out of the building in order to make room for board members to have to be in the building. So yeah, there's a lot to do there. But I think that nobody else is going to be looking out, I think, for our interest in regards to staff proximity. And I think it's going to be important for us to do that. Okay.
Is that, Ms. Renner?
Yes.
Is it possible to come up with an analysis as to what it would take financially, legislatively, practically, and being appreciative of your staffing limitations, or to request that legal interpretation as to how we would accomplish that in a fiscal or a analysis by DDGS, something like that, as to the availability of other state facilities, so that we can accomplish this objective expeditiously, hopefully.
We're relying on Mr. Nangio's prior experience to help us, and we've been meeting.
Okay.
It is a one of our many, many top priorities, but we realize we need to pull a plan together on this one, and we've been in discussions.
Okay. I think you have another item?
Yes, item K12, board meeting date change.
Vice Chair Runner, members, Ms. Stowers, Dean Keeney, Executive Director, with your approval, I recommend moving the November Sacramento Board meeting from Tuesday, November 6th to Thursday, November 8th, due to the general election being held on November 6th.
So moved.
Second.
Without objection? Okay. Ms. Richmond, next item.
Our next item is closed session. The members will now go into closed session to discuss personnel matters and pending litigation. Closed session and discuss personnel matters and pending litigation, and
We could actually announce the board approved the amendment on the Verizon matter. So,
okay.
Okay?
great.
Okay. That brings us to the conclusion of our meeting, and our meeting is adjourned.
Thank you very much.
2:30.